All right, we are live. And I know I've been on nonstop launching books, but we just have such an exciting spring that I have to be on nonstop launching books. Hi, I'm Corey Walmsley. I'm the CEO of Aurora Borealis Publishing. And today we have another author with us. I'm very happy to interview Stacey Elza. We actually used to work together back in the day, so it's kind of cool that we just work together again and launch her first novel.
It's true. It's back in like the Cenozoic era. We worked together, you and me.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, so welcome, Stacey. It's so exciting to be launching your book, and we get to talk
for
about
having me. Thank you.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you and about the book.
Well, I'd had this vague idea for this book just sort of hanging around in my mind for a while. And it started off as like an outline that just went out of control. I guess I had all these little scenes that were like flashing in my imagination. Like, I want this to happen. I want that to happen. And I feel like it was a box of Christmas ornaments and I just needed a tree to hang them on. And that's where the story itself became the tree, so to speak. Like I had read a bunch of like middle grade young adult fiction that would have like a romantic relationship between two girls or, two young women, right? But they were always like, am I gay? Like that was sort of the tone, right? Or it'd be like, is my child gay? And it was never just, can they just be two people and they happen to be of the same gender? Like, who cares why you're making, like coming out books cool, but like, can there be an option? And I don't know, between that and being like low-key fascinated by like futuristic fiction, I'm like, boom, there we go. That's how I'll do it.
That's really cool. And I like that you, I think you had sort of a similar experience to what some of my writing experience has been too. Like when I did Braving the Shore, it was an outline that got out of control. And so you sit there like thinking about that one thought. And for you, it was, why can't it just be, a romantic interest? Why can't that just be what's going on and not this big thing around it? And I had a similar thought when I was doing my book. So I'm glad.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, it was a different topic that I was, kind of like, how can I make this work? And I love that that's what you did with yours too.
Nice.
Yeah. For those who don't know us, we've both been writers in the past, writers today, writers always. Stacey, tell me kind of how you got into writing a book from, how did you kind of make that jump? Because I know a lot of people will think, oh, I want to write a book someday. And they kind of worry like, oh, do I have to have, do I have to have time? Do I have to have patience? Do I have to have, an MFA? Do I need all of these things? Like kind of tell me a little bit about your background?
Right. Well, I have an MFA from WVU, which was really helpful, but I mean, you don't have to have one. It's not like some sort of prerequisite, you know what I'm saying? I mean, come on, like I know a lot of great writers and don't have MFAs. So my God, like, don't let that stop you. Right. Yeah. But I'm always a sucker for like the journal that's going to fix my life. So I'll be at like a bookstore and I'll be like, this is it, friends. Like this leather bound journal, I'm going to write it all in here and I'm going to be so organized. I'm going to be so creative. And then I fill out like 10 pages of it and then it's not magic anymore. But then I see the new journal and I'm like, oh, but this one has flowers and, it's great. Mm-hmm. So in writing this book, I must have 6 or 7 various magic journals just floating around the detritus of my house, which is conveniently off camera right now. Because I would just take a bunch of notes in it and I would have my notes app on my phone would just be full of just lines of dialogue. So I must look nuts. If you didn't know that I was a writer, you just like see these exchanges, like you're like, what is this? But it would be a way of keeping it in one place. Like I would have to capture it when it happened, or I'd forget. Right. That's the thing, because my ADHD takes 0 prisoners, people. Like if I think of something, I have to get it down right now or it's poof, it's gone. So eventually I just had a ton of notes. And if any one snippet of dialogue or any one like description of maybe a setting would spark my interest at, at any particular moment, I'd be like, that's the part that I'm going to write about. And I would just work with that one scene.
Mhm.
And I was okay as long as I didn't remember that it was a whole book. Because if I started thinking like, I am writing a book,
Yeah.
it was too scary. It was too scary. But if it was just like, oh, take this little note that you left in your phone that's only 2 sentences long and make a little scene around it, well, that's not scary. I think, I can do that. Or like jot some things down in your magical journal. Fantastic. Not a problem there. And then eventually the characters just drove the story organically. Like they kept getting into trouble, or they kept being confused, or they kept falling in love, or being scared, or doing whatever they're bound to do. And then I would just respond to whatever situation they found themselves in.
Yeah, I love that. And I know lots of people do what you did. They, have the magic journals. They have tons of notes. They have stuff that they've, pulled together over the years. I feel like you almost like like surprised yourself into writing a book when you do things like that.
No, I did. And that came before the outline. Like it was this before it was like, you got to sit down because that's, yeah, and you got to put all these things together. And that's when like the shift, that was the first draft. The second draft of the novel post outline, because they surprise you. There'll be characters like, I thought the grandma character was going to be sort of, you know what I mean? Like over there somewhere. But she was demanding, like her voice was just really loud. Like, I want to be in this story. And when I was doing the outline, I'm like, oh my God, this isn't just a story about this cute little love story, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually the meat of the story here.
Yeah. Yeah. And for those of you who haven't read it yet, you need to get a copy. But the grandmother has dementia. And I think that because, today we deal with so many different health issues. Everybody does. We personally have them. We deal with people in our families who have them. And they can be really challenging. And I thought it was really important that you had a character with dementia that was front and center, because often, like I read a book recently where there was a grandma with dementia and she was kind of a peripheral character, and she, she popped in and she forgot things and she said some funny stuff because she forgot things, but there wasn't that like, the main character has to really deal with this. It was always just like, oh, I know grandma's kind of silly and forgetful. And this was really deep. And for someone like, I have not personally dealt with someone who had dementia. And I really loved the realness that you gave to that character.
Well, thank you. Like my dad had dementia the last maybe, I want to say 10 years of his life, but that might be stretching it a bit. And it's this slow decline. It feels like watching someone's personality just erode, right? Just gradually. And things will stabilize, at least in the experience that I saw and that I've heard a lot of people have. Things will stabilize. And then next thing you know, boom, things get markedly worse. And you're like, okay, so this is the new normal now. Things stabilize, you get used to that, boom. And it just continues. And it's weird because if you have bronchitis and it's bacterial, you take an antibiotic and you move on, right? And even if you have something chronic, like if you have, type 2 diabetes, you can, you do the diet, meds, exercise. There are ways that you can sort of continue on. But if you have something like dementia, it's going to progress one way or the other. And like from someone on the outside looking in, there's this, like, I know I felt out of control because you'd want to help. You'd want to, and you're like, you can't just say, here's some amoxicillin, right? Like there's not a lot you can do. But so much of what's written about dementia is very serious, which makes sense, right? It's serious. It can be sentimental. It can even somber. But sometimes just funny things will happen. Like I know you mentioned in that book, that the other book you'd read with the grandma with dementia, like if you don't laugh, sometimes you're going to just cry. It's laugh or cry, right? Because it will just be sort of surreal. So I wanted to get at that as well and not make it just be, a sob fest from beginning to end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you had a really nice balance there of, this is real. And also there is some silliness to it. There is some fun. And they did have bonding moments with, all three generations, which was really fun too. And, both of us are moms and we have daughters that are kind of the same age. I think
Yeah.
the oldest is a little bit older than my oldest. She's in middle school, right?
Yep, she's 13 in 7th grade. So
Okay.
right in the thick of middle school. They are 13 and 9.
Okay. So like girls that age, seeing seeing the main character be the similar age and having her perspective on, my grandmother's going through this and she's having to kind of say, okay, I have to navigate this water with my mom and with my grandmother who's going through this. So I know, the fact that you have a daughter that age, there are kids who are probably sitting there questioning like, well, what's going on with grandma? I don't understand. And to be able to read a book like that, I thought that was really important. So I was just wondering, what you think about this. Why do you think it's so important for girls and young women to see experiences in books that they're going through themselves? And, what does that do for them? And, if you want to look at the big picture for society as a whole.
Right. I think it can make you just feel less alone. Like I'm thinking of the experience like going to like online support group kind of message boards for people whose loved ones have dementia, right? Like sometimes even just going there and seeing, oh, other people have been through this too, would be for me somewhat of a relief, even if I was, the stressful situation hasn't changed, but I feel less on my own little island,
Right.
dealing with it. And it would be validating too, because sometimes you'd think, I shouldn't be feeling this way, or no one else feels this way. And again, it's a relief to know that no, that's your feelings are valid. It's other people feel that way too. You're not a complete weirdo, like calm down. But it's just something that people don't go around talking about, right? So I think having like fiction can be a nice way to, not an instruction manual, that's not what I'm going for, but it can make you feel like you have a friend who's done it, right? Like the book can be your friend. The book can make you feel less alone in this like new landscape that you're stuck in. And not just with, dementia. I know that's what we're talking about now, but I think with any kind of topic that is discussing. And what I love is it doesn't matter when it's set, right? The book can be set in the future. The book can be set in like Tsarist Russia. The book can be set in like, the year 150, I don't know. But you could deal with the same themes and they could be just as resonant today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And, there are plenty of books that we've read in the past or that were written long ago that we still read that still have some relevance because of that human experience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you brought up an important point too. This book is set in the year 2050. And, looking at our kids now, like mine are 8 and 10, and, looking at them and being like, oh, they're going to be grown-ups someday and they're going to be saying bruh to their kids. And
yes.
like all these things. When I first read it, so I've read Stacey's book probably 2 or 3 times just because that's some of the process that goes on the publishing end. And as I've read it, I've had to do double takes and just be like, oh my God, I can't imagine my kid as an adult and having her like adulting with, younger versions of herself. So I'm kind of curious. I know younger versions of themselves, that's terrifying. So I was curious too, why did you choose to set the story in the future, first of all? Because it is kind of nightmarish seeing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love that kind of speculative fiction to begin with. So, like, I mean, I like it in books. I like it in video games. I like it in movies, right? The idea of like, what are we going to be facing? So there's already this like background level of interest, right? But, and it's a way to face my own aging, because I'm going to be the grandma's age come 2050, right? She's roughly my age. And it was a way to be like, what is your life going to look like? Not just what are my kids' lives going to look like when they're about that age, but like, what's it like when you're the only one who doesn't have augmented reality glasses and you still have a phone and you're, like ask, why don't you just Google it? And they don't know what Google is because or whatever, right? I don't know. There's it's a topic that the older I get, the more anxiety I feel surrounding it. So I guess by setting it in the future, I could try to get a handle on it. Because, I mean, like imagine us as old people, Corey. Like what? Like I already feel old. Like I could barely set up the tripod and the ring light for this. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting to think about too. Like I wouldn't consider my parents to be tech savvy, but like they have, modern phones, and if I say, text me, they know how to handle that. Like, is our generation going to be a generation that just keeps moving right along and keeps accepting technology? Or are we going to be anti, virtual reality glasses and anti self-driving cars and things like that? I thought those are really interesting things.
I don't know. I mean, I have the grandma. She's a bit of a Luddite, right? And I don't know if I will be. I have no idea. Like, that's what's so crazy. I couldn't even begin to predict. Like, compare the technology now from 20 years ago. It's like, come on, man. Like what is this? Like I get to carry a computer in my pocket and talk to you on it. Like, what even is this? What even is Zoom? What? How is it happening? How's any of this working? Yeah. So yeah, in the future, all bets are off, man. I have no idea.
Yeah, it's really interesting because everything you said in there, I felt like that could really happen. We could really be doing all of these things. So those were really interesting. And then as far as the society itself goes too, I know we had a conversation before where you mentioned that, in the future, it might be like, these two women love each other, and nobody's like, oh my God, hey, did you know? Like, right. It's not a secret. It's not a thing to wonder about or to speculate on. It's just, they're getting married, or, my daughter has a relationship with a girl in her Hapkido class.
Right.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I found that to be such a freeing and wonderful idea.
Yeah. Setting it in the future was also a way to cheat into that situation too. Yeah. Because it's this assumed future where, like, well, why would it be a thing? Like who cares? Like, I don't know, like I married into a Jewish family, but nobody acted weird about it. It wasn't, but you go back enough generations and that would have been sort of, earth shattering. I don't know. It's like, there's so much more to people than just like the box they fit into. Right. And like one thing about like same-sex relationships, I feel like that's what the same-sexness of it, if you will, is what takes over. Where it's like every other quality of the relationship or of the person, it's like whoa, but it's the gay wedding. It's the gay wedding, right? Yeah. Like which is not to say that we shouldn't have like bride parades and stuff. Like that's not what I'm getting at. I mean that there's so much more to people than just that one thing. Yeah. And so if that trait were just one of many traits and everyone accepted it and it wasn't, what other parts of that relationship could we explore if we sort of set that to the side? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing to think about. And then, as you said, going back through history and looking at how our views of relationships have changed and what is acceptable and what we're just like, didn't even think to mention that.
Right.
Today. That's really interesting. And I did want to ask too, because I thoroughly enjoyed the book so much and I'm an adult and I was going through it and going, my goodness, like the little details that you threw in. I had to pause when I read, I think the grandmother had a souvenir that was from William and Kate's coronation.
Yes.
And I was like,
that was fun.
God, that's good. Like it really like threw me for a loop, but reading that book for multiple reasons, not just because it was such a good story, because it's like, this is a glimpse into my future. and what it's going to be like. It was a very interesting perspective as an adult to read the book. And I know, so who do you think would enjoy reading Falling Lessons? Taking me out of the equation.
Well, I mean, I see it two ways, right? Like you can be someone who identifies with the main character, Louisa, who's this 14-year-old girl, or you could identify with the grandma, right? Or with the mom, who versions of us in the future, right? Like, do you want to get in a time machine and zoom yourself, into your AARP, far advanced, years? Then you too could read this. It's like, look, if you were freaked out when you learned that they came out with an 80s and 90s American Girl doll, this book is for you. Like, there's a 90s one now.
I know.
Like, how though? With like flannel. I'm like, y'all stop. We are the historical dolls now, Corey. It's happening.
I know. My kids refer to the century we were born in as the 19s.
19s.
Back in the 19s. And I'm like,
back in the 20th century. Yeah, I think I do pull the 20th century card once or twice in my book, come to think of it. Like, oh, that was back in the 20th century.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very interesting wake-up call to live in the now. Right?
Absolutely. Because you may not remember it in the future. So you can't do it just with the goal of looking back. You can't live in the past for all those Pinteresty reasons that people talk about. So you're left with now. You're left with now, and that's it.
Yeah.
Which is way easier. I say that like I'm some Zen master, y'all. I like you live in the now. Nah, I'm constantly worried and high strung. But in theory, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we could be all the self-help books we've read, then yes.
Yeah, but then all fiction would be boring, right? Because it would just be like people with no problems talking to other people with no problems.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Why bother? There'd be no art.
Yeah, that could be really interesting. Then you'd have problems like, the toothpaste lid fell off and I can't find it. That'd be a great.
Yeah, chapter 2 to be continued.
It got on the carpet and now there's toothpaste on the carpet. So there are so many different things that come together to be Falling Lessons. So many different ideas, and you work with some really great, I can't even think of what the word for it is. Like you talk about dementia, and you talk about, I don't think we even mentioned Louisa's health problems.
Oh, right, how she has Tourette's.
Yeah.
And again, but I didn't want it to be the big book of Tourette's at the same time. So like it's there, but it's just one of many traits that make her who she is.
Right. And I never did ask. I meant to ask earlier. So I know we've kind of jumped around here, but that's
all I do. It's all just jumping all the way down.
Yeah. And I did want to ask you too, is Louisa anything like you?
Yes. People who've read it and who know me are like, I could hear you in Louisa. I hear that all the time. But the surprising thing is, I thought the mom was most like me, but that's not, it's interesting. That's not the feedback I'm getting from people who are like, oh, nope, so much like you.
Yeah.
She's like me if you like turned up all of my neuroses. Like, I think if you just really cranked it all up. She's also, I think she's braver than I am. But I don't even know. I don't know why that word is where that comes to me, but she strikes me as a very courageous person and sort of bolder than I think I was at that age for whatever reason.
Yeah. Maybe things that you kind of wish that you were, and you gave those to her. Probably.
Yeah. Oh God. This is like a therapy session, Corey. I love this. No, I probably did though. And we have a lot in common. Yeah. So yes. The answer is yes. Yes, okay. I think she and I have a lot in common.
Okay. Yeah. I'm always curious about that because, you know, like a lot of times when you read a book, you wonder, you know, is the main character kind of, you know, the author stuffing a lot of themselves into that, or are they pieces of all these other people? I'm curious about that. And, you know, sometimes when you are reading a book and you kind of slide into that, well, like the main character is like this, so clearly the author is, but you can't ask the author. So that's why I'm asking.
Oh, like God. There are other things that she'll do, and like I'll find it incredibly irritating. I can't think of an example, but she'll respond to something in some way that is different from how I would. And
Yeah.
and internally I'm like, you're driving me bananas right now. Like, why are you doing this? So, but
Yeah.
still love her regardless.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I always enjoy hearing about people's characters and where they come from. Um, I always enjoy taking people I don't like and giving some of their negative characteristics to the people that aren't to be liked in the book too. That's always
Nice.
fun.
It's a classic move.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So if
I wonder if like Shakespeare did that. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. Like if all the villains are like people that he hated, like, walking around London, and he's like, bro, I'm totally putting you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I always wonder, you know, somebody like if they had a really bad server and they're like, you know what, I'm killing them off in my next book. Like that's
Ooh. You know what's happened.
Yeah.
I mean,
anyway, there are no servers dying in this book, so we're all good.
nope, no servers dying.
I haven't seen anybody pop up with questions, so I don't have any extra questions for you, but I did want to make sure that we showed everybody your book, so if you can hold it up.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're up without knocking myself over. Wow, calamity.
There it is.
Isn't it lovely?
Yes.
The
Big
graphic
shout.
designer did a fantastic job. Fantastic.
Yes, big shout out to Karen for the cover on that.
Look, check this out. Okay, look. See this star? Now watch it. What? Excuse me? It wraps around. Pardon me. And then if you turn it, there's another star. I mean, come on. It's good. It's good. And you know what? It feels nice too. I'm gonna say it. Good choice of cover. Paper feels substantial. Doesn't feel like newsprint. Not too scratchy and rough. Like I have strong opinions about like how tactile things are.
Yeah.
A+.
Yeah, one of the things I love about the covers through the company that prints them that we do, they're kind of like I don't want to say a rubbery feel, but it's like just enough that you don't feel like your hands sliding off the page. So,
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
And today we actually have a special going on because this is launch day. And
I thought you were going to say we have a special guest. And I was like, oh my God, it's going to be like Jerry Springer. Like somebody's going to like come in like right behind you, you know, right in front of the roses behind you and be like, surprise. And then,
they're going to do the DNA test. They're going to be like, sorry, it's not your book.
Imagine. Like, womp womp.
That would be a really disappointing thing at the end of an interview. But no, I was going to say we have a special going on today. If you want to get a copy of Falling Lessons, you can get the ebook copy for just 99 cents. I will be putting the link in the comments. You can head over to Amazon and get it. You can go purchase the hardcover, the paperback, sorry, anytime you want. It's on Amazon and barnesandnoble.com. And of course, the ebook is available on both sites too. So, but today only we have the special on Amazon for the ebook. So I did want to wrap up with one last question now. Okay. What is the big picture takeaway that you want readers to get from the book?
Live now and live like you mean it. Because you don't get a second draft in life. There's no rough draft. You have to make it count, because we're all gonna be the grandma's age sooner than we think, right? At least I feel that way. Yeah. So I don't know, like there are all these things I wish I would have lived more fully into when I was experiencing them, rather than being wrapped up in my own anxiety about them or anticipation or boredom or, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's like, I mean, I'm 42 now, right? And I swear to God, ever since I hit 40, it's been like, oh, okay, now. Like this sort of halcyon days, they are over. So yeah, live now. Like enjoy the nice blue sky while you can before they put particles in the air or something crazy sci-fi. Who knows, man? Sci-fi could be real. Like, I don't know. Enjoy the weather now before it's like way, way hotter. Frankly, I should get out and take a walk at some point, take my own advice for once. But yeah, like, what if this is the best it's going to be, right? Like, I know it's good to be optimistic, but I don't know. If the present is as good as it's going to be, my God, enjoy it now, because you don't have a guarantee of later.
Very true. And I love that as a takeaway from the book too. It's a really good thing for everybody, all generations, to be thinking about.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. And
thank you for having me. This was super fun.
Yeah, good. It's not often I get to sit down and like talk shop with people. So I always appreciate doing interviews. Yeah, so if anybody has watched the interview and you have questions, please make sure you comment. We are happy to answer them at any time. Grab a copy of the book. It is, as I said, on Amazon and it's on Barnes & Noble. The special today is 99 cents for the ebook on Amazon. Thank you, Stacey, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody who watched with us.